Have you ever just stopped and looked around at a skyscraper, at a system of laws, at a country, and wondered, how did we get here? I mean, civilization feels like a given, right? But it's not. It was built piece by piece over thousands and thousands of years. So today, we're going to do just that. We are going to build the story of civilization one block at a time.
You might know this story. It's the legend of Babel. And it gets at something really fundamental about us as a species. We are incredibly powerful when we work together. And from the very beginning, it seems like that collective power has been focused on one massive, ongoing project: building the city. And that makes perfect sense when you look at the words themselves. You see, our word civilization comes directly from the Latin word for city, which is civus. It's right there in the language. To understand our world, we have to understand how and why we started living together in these dense, complicated, and totally revolutionary places.
But before you can build a city, before you can lay a single brick, you need a solid foundation. And that foundation wasn't made of stone or steel, it was made of food. A radical, world-altering shift in how we fed ourselves had to happen first. A change so big it would reshape the entire planet.
It all started with the planet itself changing in a massive way. So picture this. About 13,000 years ago, the last ice age finally ends. The planet starts to warm up, the glaciers recede, and all this new land opens up. And that warmth allows these wild grains to just explode across the landscape, creating an abundance of food like we'd never seen before.
This contrast, it is everything. For pretty much all of human history, we were hunter-gatherers. We lived in small, mobile groups that were pretty equal. You owned only what you could carry. But farming changed the entire game. Suddenly, you could stay in one place. You could grow more food than you needed, a surplus. And for the very first time, you could accumulate wealth. And that, right there, set the stage for social classes and hierarchy.
But here's the thing. This wasn't some simple, easy upgrade. It was a trade-off, a huge one. Sure, you could support a bigger population, but cramming all those people together meant that diseases could just rip through a community. And being tied to the land meant you were suddenly at the mercy of droughts and floods. And most importantly, that surplus we just talked about, it created something humanity had never really dealt with before: inequality.
And the scale of this change, it's just staggering. Since we started clearing land for farms all those thousands of years ago, we've cut down about half of all the trees on Earth. This is the moment, really, that some scientists call the Anthropocene, the age where human beings become the main force shaping the planet.
All right, so the foundation is set. We have a surplus of food. Now we can get to the next stage. Let's see how that surplus allowed us to lay the very first bricks of urban life, creating not just buildings, but entirely new kinds of societies.
So, let's take a trip to one of the world's very first cities, Çatalhöyük, in what's now Turkey. We're talking 9,000 years ago, and about 8,000 people lived here. And get this, the houses were packed so tightly together, there were no streets. So how did you get home? You had to climb a ladder onto your roof and then drop down through a hole in the ceiling. Can you imagine that?
But for all this incredible innovation, life was, it was brutally short. The average man in Çatalhöyük lived to be about 34, and for women who had to face the immense dangers of childbirth without any modern medicine, it was even shorter, around 30 years old. Civilization was being built, for sure, but the cost for the people building it was incredibly high.
And yet, these new cities became these incredible engines of invention. Pottery made it possible to store food and water safely. The wheel, and it wasn't invented for carts first, it was for making pots faster, was then adapted for transport. And then came the discovery of bronze, this mix of copper and tin that created a metal stronger and deadlier than anything that had come before. It literally defined an entire age.
So, that surplus of grain we keep talking about, it created a whole new set of problems. It had to be managed, which gave rise to a priestly class, people who could track the seasons, the harvests, and the calendars. And of course, a giant pile of food is a super tempting target for your neighbors, which gave rise to a warrior class to defend it. And that's why one of the oldest cities we know of, Jericho, was surrounded by a massive stone wall and a tower.
Okay, so our city is growing. It's getting really complex, with specialized jobs and different social classes. But how do you manage all that? How do you keep it from falling apart? You need a blueprint. You need new tools for organizing people and power on a massive scale.
And for those tools, we've got to go to Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. It's here, in a place called the Fertile Crescent, that the Sumerian people really perfected the next set of building blocks for civilization.
And their most important invention? Oh, it has to be writing. Now, it didn't start out with epic poems or love letters. Nope. It started with accounting. The priests in the big temple warehouses needed a way to keep track of all the bushels of grain and jars of oil. So it starts with simple pictures, then those evolve into symbols for ideas, and finally, you get cuneiform, this sophisticated script that could record anything from a trade deal to an epic poem.
As cities got richer, and, well, as war became more common, a totally new kind of leader shows up. Power started to shift away from the temple priests and toward a warlord known as the Lugal. And that word literally just means big man. These were military guys who claimed the right to rule not because the gods chose them, but because they won on the battlefield. And the world's very first literary hero, Gilgamesh, was one of these guys. His story, the first epic in history, is all about the anxieties of this new urban world. He's a city builder, a conqueror, but his whole journey ultimately teaches him this really humbling lesson. Even if you're the greatest king in the greatest city on earth, you still can't escape death.
Okay, so we've got the foundation, we've got the bricks, and we have the blueprint. But to hold this whole massive thing together, to build something bigger than just one city-state, you need one final, crucial piece: the law. A system that applies to everyone, everywhere.
And for that, we meet Hammurabi of Babylon. Around 1792 BCE, he becomes king of a pretty small city-state. But this guy was a master strategist, a brilliant diplomat. He used alliances and even writing itself like a weapon, skillfully playing his enemies against each other until he was the last one standing. He united all of Mesopotamia into the first great Babylonian empire.
And he did it with this absolutely brilliant toolkit. First, he took his local city god, Marduk, and promoted him to be the king of all the gods, which was a clever way of justifying his own rule. Then he created a single, unified code of law for his entire diverse empire. And he completely changed the image of what a king was, not some brutal conqueror, but a shepherd taking care of his people.
Now, we've all heard that famous phrase from his code, right? An eye for an eye. It sounds so simple, so equal. But was it really? Let's take a closer look at the actual blueprint for his society.
So, was justice in Babylon truly blind? Well, this table tells the whole story. And the answer is a hard no. That eye for an eye thing? It only applied if you hurt someone in your own social class. If a nobleman knocked out another nobleman's tooth, yeah, he'd lose his own tooth. But if he knocked out a commonen's tooth, he just had to pay a fine. Justice was not blind at all. It was sharply, clearly divided by social class.
But still, you can't overstate Hammurabi's legacy, carved into this gleaming stone pillar for everyone to see. He proved that an empire could be held together by something more than just brute force. It could be held together by a shared system of laws. He showed that ideas, written down and shared, could be just as powerful as any army.
So here we are. From the first sacks of extra grain to the first legal codes, we've built this incredible, complex structure. We did it to create order, to create stability, to protect ourselves from the chaos of nature. But it leaves us with a question that echoes all the way from ancient Babylon to our world today. To gain the security of the city walls, what freedoms of the open plains did we have to leave behind?